Welcome to This Week in Real Estate with Jonathan Harmon. Listen in as him and other members of the J Harmon Home Team speak about all things real estate with local experts here in the Middle Tennessee area. Be sure to check out jharmonhometeam.com for more information and how to get in touch with our amazing team. Welcome to the show.
All right. Good morning, everybody. It's Jonathan Harmon with the J Harmon Home Team. I'm talking over the music, Trent. I apologize. I should have waited. It's very inspiring.
I know. I feel like
that's much better. Okay, there we go. Jonathan Harmon with J Harmon Home Team, powered by Keller Williams. And I've got my friend Declan McGarry here. Declan, how's it going, man?
I'm doing well. How are you, Jonathan?
Good. This is the first time in a while that I've done one of these through a computer screen. I'm having like COVID flashbacks right now. It's like, ooh, are you sick? And the reality is, no, we just couldn't get our in-person schedules to line up. So we're doing this virtually, which is awesome because Trent pivoted in I don't know, 5 minutes?
Yeah, that was pretty quick.
Maybe 7 minutes. That's pretty awesome, man.
Yeah,
good job, Trent.
Nothing to it.
And Declan's working from home today, and that's awesome. So one of the cool things about the current work environment is we have that option a lot more now, don't we?
We do. I don't take advantage of it that often. Today I am, because my partner's out his wife's having a baby, and so just figured, you know what, I'm gonna work from home today. But
yeah,
it's as an office broker, I try not to do it too much because I like to say I've got to eat my own cooking.
Yeah. Well, I would venture to say you're probably a decent cook, though.
Yeah.
You seem like a Renaissance type guy that probably knows his way around the kitchen.
Figuratively or literally? Literally, I can follow a recipe.
That's better than me because I can't. I always screw it up.
I don't have the ability. I don't have the innate, ability to know what ingredients are going to go well together. So I pretty much stick to a recipe. But I can do that.
Well, see, I'm the other way around. I'll put some stuff together, and people are like, "Oh, this is delicious. Can you make it again?" I'll be like, "Nope, sure can."
Not a chance.
Zero chance. It's a one-shot deal, buddy.
It will never happen.
So Declan and I got to know each other. It's kind of a roundabout way. So Declan is actually married to an acquaintance of mine from back in high school. Your wife's a little bit younger than me, and her dad and I are friends as well through Smyrna Rotary Club. And gosh, it's been 4 years ago, probably approaching. And I was talking to your father-in-law, and I said, yeah, we're looking for some space in Murfreesboro to open Cedar Glade Brews. And he was like, well, have you talked to my son-in-law yet? And I said, no, I haven't, as a matter of fact. So he got us together, and Declan ended up being the guy that helped us get the location where we are at Cedar Glade. So 906 Ridgely was thanks to Declan McGarry. So even realtors,
3 years.
It's crazy, right? We've been open over a year, and it took us a year to build it out, and we started the process before that. So even realtors use realtors sometimes. We take our own advice when it's outside of our scope of expertise, and Declan did a phenomenal job. And which company are you with?
NAI Nashville.
Okay, and NAI is a national brand for commercial, correct?
It is. We have a global presence. We've got offices in all the major and most of the tertiary markets across the U.S. Each office is individually owned, so it's kind of like a think of it more of a franchise, but we're all connected. We have
very much like Keller Williams.
I think that's a good comparison. So we get clients that do business all over the country, and they want to be able to use a one-stop shop.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're able to refer them to other offices in different parts of the country and quarterback it from Nashville or wherever. So it's a good, it's kind of a cross between a big corporate office like a CBRE and a Cushman or Wakefield, and a smaller boutique. We're that happy middle ground.
Yeah. Yeah. You still get that local boots on the ground service. Declan's going to get in his car and come show you a place or come look at your place or whatever. But you've got that global reach as well. It's pretty cool. So
That's
we
right.
found that to be very useful. And I've referred you to a few other folks as well that you've been able to help kind of for the same reasons. You cover multiple markets.
Yeah.
And Trent, did you get this? Declan uses words like tertiary. I forgot that word existed, but it's a great word.
I have no idea what that means.
You just stick with me, Jonathan. I'll teach you a thing or two.
I love it. That's awesome. So tell me, I don't know. I know you're a licensed real estate agent. Do you ever do residential?
We have to be licensed. Well, this is awkward.
Well, look at the time, and that brings us to a close for this week in real estate. No.
Hold on, Trek's calling me.
Yeah, exactly. No, they're not watching, I promise. But what have you done residential deals, or are you solely a commercial guy?
I am solely commercial. We do not. Our firm doesn't. It's not. They don't really. They certainly don't want us, and they sort of frown upon us doing any residential deals. But you're right. Our license is the same. You and I have the same license, so I can do residential. But I would just refer any referral or any residential business that I had the opportunity to do. I would refer out to another agent. One of the beauties of sharing a license is that I can give you a residential deal, you give me a commercial deal, and we can pay each other referral fees, which we cannot do for the local, anybody who's not licensed. So that's what I do. Residential is a different sandbox, has a different, frankly, it's just not a good use of my time. And you're better off using somebody who's an expert in that field, as you alluded to.
Well, and that's kind of what I was going toward, is that they are, contrary to what most people believe, even though it is still real estate sales, they are, I mean, their world's different. And it's always baffled me or I don't know, maybe stumped me as to why there isn't two different licenses, or at least an endorsement of sorts, right? So you've got a real estate license, and you've got an endorsement in residential, or an endorsement in commercial, or an endorsement in leasing management or property management, because they're all under the same license, but they are vastly different skill sets.
Yeah. I know. I couldn't agree more. Why they have the same license, I'm not sure. But commercial is definitely more buyer beware, and so. I guess
it's almost 100% buyer beware.
Yeah.
I mean, unless that seller is just flat out lying, that's about it. That's about the only protection you got.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. So you've got to be careful as somebody who's dipping a toe into it for the first time, or who doesn't have a lot of experience. You've got to cover all your bases. Whereas in residential, there's a lot of protections, and residential agents have a lot of paperwork and boxes that you have to check that we don't. And so it's interesting when I do a deal with a residential agent on the other side, they always come with a whole bunch of paperwork, and it's foreign,
You're like, why do I need to discuss COVID-19 with you on a piece of paper? Yeah, I know.
Exactly.
We got some dumb paperwork, man.
Yeah, exactly. So, but yeah, it's so I would say, I think the license that covers, I think what's going through, the licensing committee's mind is if you can get covered to do residential, then you're good for commercial as well. But in reality, though, it is a very different skill set, and you find pretty quickly, if you screw up a commercial deal, it can go sideways in a lot of different ways.
Sure.
So you got to know what you're doing.
Well, and I'd say you also run into, so the complexity of a single deal can be significantly more, and therefore your lead time to go from looking to closed is typically significantly longer than a residential deal, right?
Definitely.
Let's talk about that. So some of the complexity, some of the things that people don't even really think about. I mean, we can start with stuff like zoning and what's allowed in certain things. And I think this is why it's so complex, is that if I have a single idea of what I want my business to look like, and municipalities don't match each other, right, on what's allowed in certain places. And then I can say one little thing about how I might want to open a business that exists in this municipality times 5, but I'm going to change this one little piece of it that's going to give me a competitive edge. And all of a sudden, the city looks at that usage completely different than they do the other 5.
Yeah, that's and that's something that we went through with your deal. I recall is little things like with parking. Remember, we found a perfect location, everything was great, and parking was what just about derailed it.
It was close.
Was it because we didn't have enough parking?
Yeah, and we worked through because we had multiple suites, and so we had to kind of almost have like a sharing, a co-op of sorts with the other businesses in the building, and really disclose what the plan was for hours and operation and those types of things.
And you had to sit in front of the committee a few times.
I did. I didn't ever have to go in front of the full, like the elected officials, but we definitely met with the city officials. Several times.
And that's a great example of every municipality has different, like take parking, for example. If you have retail in one municipality, they require a certain amount of parking per square feet, and depending on where that is, and if it's industrial, it's different. If it's office, it's different. And so, that's just one example, but, if it gets to where you're buying, millions of dollars, or a building that costs millions of dollars, you don't want to close on that and then realize, we don't have enough parking to do what we want to do with this building we just bought.
And worse, we don't have enough space to add the parking.
Right.
So it literally will not work.
Yeah. And now you're sitting on a $10 million building or whatever it was and going, oh, oops, that was a big mistake. Yeah. So, so there's things like that. And what I do as in my role is really I'm more of a quarterback and, help to connect clients with the appropriate people. I'm not an expert in, zoning. I'm not an expert in, construction management, anything like that, but I know enough to be dangerous, but really I know enough to steer you to people who can help and say, look, here's a potential pitfall. I don't know if it's going to be one, but why don't you get an architect to come in and weigh in? And the same with like build out. If you're buying a building or leasing, if you're leasing a building that's in pretty raw condition, how much is it going to cost to build it out? I don't know exactly. I can tell you a rough figure, but and get somewhat close. But let's get some experts in to give you some quotes and find out.
Well, and have the connections to some of those experts, and you are good at being the source of the source, right? And saying,
that's a good way to put it.
I don't necessarily know the answer to that, but I know who will, and you should call this person, or you should get in touch with this person. The other thing on residential, at least for the most part, I'd say 90% of the process is known, right? So we know you got to get a lender. We know you got to get a home inspection. We know you got, like the process is pretty well established. Wash, rinse, repeat, right? In commercial, like you said, pointing out those pitfalls and saying, okay, you're going to open a business that kind of fits in this box. Right? You're going to need to definitely look at this, and this. But there's not a published, established, like checklist type situation for me as a business owner or future business owner to go, okay, check, check, check. Instead, I'm relying on other people. I ended up, this happened several times. I go to the city, and the city, by the way, in city of Murfreesboro, treated us very well. So we don't sit here and go, oh, the city, they ran a, and we get that a lot from folks that I talk to. They actually treated us very well. But even they don't necessarily have a checklist to hand me. Okay, right. So you want to open a brewery. Here's your checklist. That just doesn't exist. But you were able to say, all right, I know a little bit about this general area of business, so let's start looking at parking. Let's start looking at square footage usage. You're definitely going to have an architect. You're definitely going to have mechanicals and things like that. And let's start asking these questions and figuring out how to learn what we need to still know.
That's a great point. And, that is one of the things about commercial is every deal is different, and every deal has different, a different amount of hair on it. But
was that a ball joke?
A ball joke? Oh, ball joke. No. Well, maybe. Now that you mention it. Some deals have less hair than others.
Such is life.
Such is life. So, and like you said, you can even, go to the, call someone in the planning and codes department and say, this is what I'm trying to do here. Will it work? And they may say, maybe, because they don't necessarily know.
Yeah, they usually say, well, it depends.
That's exactly right, because they don't want to sign off on it and say, yeah, sure. So
I asked somebody, there's a funny, I don't know if you know the story, and I won't name names or anything, but I had talked to somebody in planning. This was in our deal, and they told me it wasn't going to work. Right, like whatever the thing was at that moment. Yeah, it's not going to work. Okay, well, I didn't like that answer. Yeah, so I didn't like that answer. So I talked to somebody else, right, and they said, well, it could work if under these conditions. And I said, would you mind emailing that to me? Right, because I wanted it in writing that they said that, right? And they said, yeah, I'm not going to do that because they didn't want to be held to.
Of course.
Yeah. Declan said that, they didn't want that. They just wanted the phone call, and that's it.
That's so funny, but it's so true. There's a lot of passing the buck, and everybody's afraid to put anything in writing. And so I always, whenever, you can, if you don't get the answer you want, just pick up the phone, call them, whoever it is, even if it's another broker, they may say, no, we're not going to do this deal with you for, whatever reason. Pick up the phone and get that sort of off the record color. It's important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and and this is what it ended up doing is it tipped their hand to kind of a loophole for something. And so then I had some guidance as to I hate to say it this way, but almost how to work the system to some extent. And really it was just guidance on what I needed to do to be in compliance. Right.
Right.
But they can't really tell you, in order for you to be in compliance, you have to follow these couple of steps. That's not really what their job is, right? And it could certainly be taken the wrong way if then the next business doesn't necessarily get the same treatment or same information. So you got to think through. You got to read between the lines sometimes on on what you're being told.
Definitely. And the squeaky wheel does get the grease.
I'm pretty dadgum squeaky. Yeah.
You are a squeaky wheel.
Yeah, for sure. All right, so let's shift gears a little bit. Let's talk about the market in general and kind of what you see on the commercial side of things that's happening right now. Of course, the talk of the town in residential is interest rates. Mortgage interest rates are higher than they've been in multiple years. Historically, they're probably about average, but that average, the perception of average has certainly changed over the last 5 or 6 years with sub 5 rates. And that has had an effect, a tremendous effect on movement within the residential space. What does that look like? Have rates affected the commercial space? Have other factors affected that? And I guess basically, Declan, how's the market on the commercial side of things in Middle Tennessee?
It depends on your vertical on which asset class you're talking about, but in general, it's slowed. It's definitely slowed. I think the big institutional buyers that were coming in and just snatching up and paying, stupid sums of money for multifamily, retail developments, that's slowed. So there's a little bit less competition, where there may have been 10 people trying to vie for, a multifamily building. Now there's, one or two. And sometimes you may be the only one at the table negotiating. So I think obviously there's a disconnect between buyers and sellers still. The sellers have not really dropped their prices, and buyers are going, well, that's crazy because look how much money it's costing me now. And this has been on the market for 6 months, whereas a year ago it would have been on the market for 30 days
maybe.
And yeah, and so things are slow because there's a little bit of there's that delta between what the owners think their building's worth and what buyers think it's worth.
I had it put to me in residential that sellers still think it's 2021, but buyers think it's 2011. So there's about a 10-year gap between them. It's just the wrong 10 years.
That's true. I would say that pertains to the commercial world as well.
Yeah.
But then you look at, industrial and multifamily is still a very popular asset class. Retail's doing well, and leasing wise, very low vacancy in both industrial, retail. So those are tight markets. Office, bit of a different story. Office is still struggling. However, if you dig a little bit deeper, it depends on the class of office. It depends on the location and the size. So the 1,500 to 3,500 square foot suites are leasing pretty quickly still. There's a lot of demand for them. But much above that, the 5 to 10 to 20,000 square foot suites are still pretty. Those are lagging pretty far behind. And then,
do you think that? I'm going to interrupt you for a sec. Do you think that is more of a shift in just kind of how we do business that's going to be around for a while, or do you think that is more of an economic factor, due to the current market? I have an opinion on that, and I don't know if I phrased the question real well, but go ahead with it.
I think I know what you're saying, and it's a good question. The hybrid work model is likely here to stay, in my opinion.
Right. That's exactly what I was asking.
I had breakfast the other day with one of the top office brokers in Nashville, and he's been doing it for 3 decades. And he said office is going to come back to near where it was by the end of this year. And
why does he think that? Is it wishful thinking?
Yes, I think we're all optimistic as brokers and realtors in general. I think we have to be optimistic. But his line of reasoning was, partly Nashville, because we have so many companies moving here, they're filling that void. So as if a company was in 20,000 feet in 2018, maybe they downsized to 7,000 feet. And do the remote hybrid. Who's going to fill that, that space that they left? Well, a company that's moving to Nashville. So we're in a better position than, markets in other parts of the country where they don't have that influx of new companies. But the other thing is the class AA. There's been a lot of, I call it AA buildings. It's brand new, they just built, they're right downtown. They've got all the bells and whistles. Those are what everybody wants right now. Those are going to fill up probably in the next 6 months. And then where are people going to go? So that's what he was saying, eventually right now, those buildings are hot, but they're going to fill up and then they're going to companies that are coming are going to be forced to start taking the Class B office products that they don't really want.
But
So
will we ever get back to the point where your entire workforce shows up at an office, even 3 days a week? I mean,
I just don't think so.
I don't think so either. Because I think
Yeah.
even pre-COVID, people were clamoring for, back when I was a long time ago, telecommuting, right? You heard that term. Or now, like you said, the hybrid work model. People were asking for that a lot even before COVID, and then COVID basically said, "Nope, we're doing this."
Right.
And now
And prove
post-COVID,
that it works.
right? And now post-COVID, it's like, okay, we would like you back in the office, 1 or 2 days a week, or a couple days a month, or whatever, right? And I just don't think people are gonna. They're just not going to vacate that, and we're seeing the evidence of that on the residential side, because in the last 2 years, 3 years since COVID, the demand for, all right, I got to have a room that's going to be an office, right? I either need an office or I need an extra bedroom that can be an office, and I got to be able to lock it, or whatever, right? Almost every single buyer needs right,
Mm-hmm.
some kind of an office.
Interesting. Well, that's further proof, in my opinion. And no, I agree with you. I don't see it ever coming back the way it was. It's wishful thinking. All these big, a lot of big companies are saying you've got to be back in the office. Pinnacle said that, HCA said that, and I think it'll work for now, but eventually, I think they're going to probably reverse course. That's what I think. And they're going to offer the hybrid model.
So then, what do you do with all that office space?
Therein lies the problem.
I mean, it exists, so what do you do with it?
Right. Well, in some markets, they are beginning to convert some of those old office buildings downtown into multifamily. And that's one possibility. It's very expensive to do, though. And it basically requires you to just gut the entire building and start over again.
Yeah.
To my knowledge, we haven't seen any of that happen in Nashville yet, and I don't think we're there yet. But it is a problem. I mean, downtown in the core right now, the AT&T building,
also known as the Bat Tower.
Yep, the Batman building, as my son likes to point out every time we drive by. He's 4. How old is he? Yeah, 4.
It's your story, dude.
Last I checked, anyways.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that product downtown is gonna take a few years, but hopefully it as the gentleman I was talking to, who was postulating that we're gonna get back to normal levels this year. Hopefully that comes true. I mean, I hate to see those buildings just languish.
Yeah, I think it's pretty doggone optimistic, to be honest. I think if you're holding one of those in your portfolio, you need to be thinking about what you're going to do with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. If it was up to me, I wouldn't want to be in that position right now.
No, for sure. Let's go down this road for a second. You got any beans that you can spill on some cool stuff coming to our area? Is there any scoop you can give us?
In particular, Murfreesboro, not really. You're probably just more plugged in to that in that department than I am.
What about Nashville? It doesn't necessarily have to be Murfreesboro. We can travel.
You get around. What did I just? I was just reading an article today. I mean, there's so much going on in Nashville. You remember like 7 years ago, you could keep up with the cranes and the buildings and the developments, and it was, you'd be excited for the next, if there was a mixed use development, you'd watch and follow its development and progress. And now there's so much. I mean, it's just Nashville's. We're about to break. I don't know if we've officially broke it, but we are. They are asking over $100 a square foot in rent for some retail in Nashville right now. downtown 2nd Avenue, as well as 12th South. There's couple new projects in 12th South that are asking $100 a square foot.
That's a lot.
It's crazy. I don't know if they'll get it, but
man, I mean, think about that. So, okay, so you've got a 1,500 square foot little spot you want to put your smoothie shop in at $100 a foot, right? So 15
triple net, of course, which means you've got to pay your operating expenses as well.
Right. So $15K a month, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Just to open the freaking doors, and you hadn't even turned the lights on yet.
Right.
How many dang smoothies do you have to sell to do that?
And what do you have to charge, right, per smoothie?
Yeah. This is a $15 smoothie because we got to sell, 1,000 of these just to make our rent.
It's it's a scary prospect if you're a business. I'm working with a group right now that's they're well funded, but they're a startup, and where they want to be, it's just hard to make those numbers pencil. And so you've either got to be very, very confident and very, very well funded, or have an existing, if you're what we call a national credit tenant, like a Starbucks or Dunkin' Donuts,
sure,
they can afford to take those kind of risks. But if you're a local mom and pop, which is what I think a lot of those developments, 12 South, started out as an area for those types of
absolutely.
businesses.
That's mafiosos and stuff, right?
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
So are they going to be able to continue to afford to be there? I don't know.
Well, and then you start, okay, so you're mafiosos, you've been there for whatever, 25, 30 years or whatever. Then you start looking at the numbers and you go, does it make sense for me to stay here? Right?
Yeah.
Let's say I own the building. Can I turn around and open further out somewhere and either sell or rent out my space and actually improve my bottom line?
Right.
100%. Like those questions start entering your mind. They have to, right?
Yeah. Or can I develop it myself? Right.
Right.
A lot of these folks that have owned those buildings for decades are either selling it to developers or just developing it themselves, which is kind of cool. Even here in East Nashville, where Hunter's Station is now located, Hunter's used to be right there on Gallatin. It was an automotive, but still is. But they did what you did. They were an automotive customizer. There you go. Yeah, and they picked up, and they said this is worth a lot more money with a different use on it.
I'm no longer the highest and best use.
There you go. Yep. So rather than sell it though, they developed it themselves, made it Hunter Station. They got some cool
It's friggin' awesome, man. That food court thing, it's cool.
Yeah,
it's super cool.
And they moved down Trinity Lane, which is off the beaten path, but they're a destination. They don't need to be.
That's right.
They don't rely on foot traffic.
Exactly.
So,
yeah. Interesting. Well, and then we also start seeing people collaborate, right? So this business and this business not merge the business, but they'll share space. There's all kinds of opportunities that people come up with almost out of necessity,
Yeah. Yeah. It's a crazy time right now for Nashville, but I think, ultimately, I like it. People go, I know a lot of local folks who've grown up here, some of them are a little more resistant to the change, and I get that, but
well, it hurts to see institutions close, right? It hurts to see an exit in and some of those kind of situations, and you're just like,
you're right.
Because I've been to 500 shows there or whatever, and it's painful. It's painful to see that chapter, that book end.
It absolutely is, and Nashville needs to be careful because I think they can do it right. They can do it the right way, but they could do it the wrong way as well if they rush into it. And this did happen really quickly. This whole surge, Nashville becoming the it city. It felt like I moved here in 2009, and it was kind of starting to happen, but really the last 5, 6 years, it was just wow. You look out and go, that's not the Nashville that I saw
No,
12 years ago.
no, so, and forgive me, this is the old guy that grew up here thing. I really, really just don't want to see another country star named bar on Second Avenue. Like, I just every time that happens, I feel like a little part of me dies inside, and I'm just like,
Well, I hate to break it to you, Jonathan, but I think we've got to let go of Broadway. We've lost it.
I
Lower
know,
Broad's gone to the tourists. We've
I
lost
know,
it.
I
Let's
know, I
we got to
know.
now focus on the East Nashville and the
Oh,
12
Declan,
South and the.
killing me, dude. I
I'm
know.
sorry. I'm an optimist, but I'm a realist.
I know, I know. You're not wrong,
Uh,
but I can still gripe about it. Doggone it.
you sure can. Yeah, you're a local. You're allowed.
So, all right, man. We're about at the end of our time, and what else? What do you want to leave us with? Give me a 1 minute Declan McGarry speech here.
Oh, no pressure, huh?
I
My
didn't prep you for
elevator
this one.
pitch.
Yeah.
What I want to leave you with. Well, I think if you're coming into the market or you're already established in the market and you're a tenant or a buyer, do some research. I would recommend get representation. A lot of folks think they can do it themselves, and they'll have better luck if they just call on the landlords or the brokers themselves. And that's just not the case
And it's not
right now.
necessary.
Well, it's not necessary because tenant rep and buyer rep fees are generally paid by the landlord, so it doesn't cost you anything. But
Hmm.
here's the thing, in this market, it is so tight right now that landlord and their brokers are very cognizant of wasting their time, and so they are much more likely to take you seriously if you have representation,
Hmm.
especially if it's from a with a broker or a firm that's got relationships with those brokers. At the end of the day, we like to do business with people that we like. Brokers are no different.
Hmm.
And so, yeah, well, I would recommend whether it's me or anybody, just get some representation.
Hmm. Yeah, it's good advice. Um,
CYA.
same thing holds true on residential as does in commercial in that regard. Get somebody that knows what they're doing, and you'll almost always come out ahead.
There you go.
So, man, I appreciate your time. Tell everybody I said hello, and it's good to see you, bud.
You too. Thanks, Jonathan.
Thanks, Declan. So, if you have any commercial real estate needs, Declan is definitely someone I would recommend reaching out to, having that conversation. Of course, if you got residential needs, give me a shout. We did not mention Mr. Bryan Nale, our, of course, mortgage lender of choice over at Primis Mortgage. And if you have mortgage needs, definitely reach out to Bryan. And if for whatever reason you don't like Bryan, we also have Miss Heather McGarry, Declan's wife, that can help you with some of those needs.
Who's now at Pinnacle.
That's right. She
I told you
she
that,
just
yeah.
moved 2 months ago.
Yeah, 3 or 4 months now, but recently.
Yep.
Mhm.
So Heather does a great job. That's who I went to high school with. So I've known her for a very, very, very long time. So so anyway, yeah, love to get some pub in there for them as well. So that's about it. Trent, you got anything?
No, sir. Good to go.
All right. Thanks, Declan. Appreciate you. And you guys go and have a fruitful week. We'll talk to you again real soon.
Thanks, Jonathan.
Thanks, Declan.